Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Your Next Business Bestie. My name is Jen Waybor Hart, and I'm your host. This is such a cool episode. I was thinking this morning that this week's guest has known me the longest, which is not technically true. Rosanna and I have known each other since high school, but we just really became friends in about 2020. Whereas this week's guest, she and I have known each other for 9 years this month. We're recording this in August. This episode, I think it'll be October when it's live. But
10
we have
years
known,
this month.
is it 10
10.
years? 10 years.
Hmm.
Look how cool we are. But I was thinking it's a very, very unique episode. One, because Krystina and I have been friends for so long, but also we've seen each other through our entrepreneurial journeys, and they are so different from when we met 10 years ago. But before I get too far ahead of myself, hi, Krystina. Welcome to Your Next Business Bestie. I'm so excited to have you.
Hi, thanks for having me. I am so excited to be here. Oh my God. I
So
just can't
Krystina
believe it. It's so
lives
exciting.
I, so Krystina lives in the Portland, Maine area, and she actually helped me name this podcast. I don't even know. This was a long. You were here in November of 22, and we came up
Yes.
with the name of this podcast, and you helped me
Because
Google
we had
names.
Cammy's, it was that like convention
Extraordinary
type thing that
Women.
we went to.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, all right. We're going to talk about your whole journey, but tell our listeners what it is you do now, 2024.
Okay. In 2024, I own the Messy Cookie, which is essentially a way of saying that I am a baker. I am super passionate about sharing what I do with people, showing people how to do what I do, and finding new ways to basically take what I love about people and being with people in the community, virtually, whatever, and all of this just positive energy that I've always been kind of known for, but being able to put that into a brand and just a lifestyle that I can live and be able to share with the world.
Beautiful. And we are going to get to the messy cookie, but we're going to go in a time machine for a second. We're going to go back to 10 years ago this month to a little comedy bar hole in the wall in Portland, Maine. I was just telling my husband the story the other day, which is so funny. But Krystina and I met in the most stereotypical girls in their 20s way of meeting. We were at this comedy club. I was sort of dating the guy who was a manager for this band. Krystina was dating guitar. Did you play guitar? I
Keyboardist,
think keyboard.
pianist,
Okay, something we
something
don't
like that.
remember.
Yeah.
Clearly very significant person. Not at all. But he is significant because it's how we met. So we ended up both at this gig. Our friend Amy was there as well. And Amy and Krystina met in the girls' bathroom at this gig that this band was playing at. And from there, we did shots at the bar and we spent the whole rest of the night drinking and listening to music. And it was like, again, the most just the epitome of early 20s. I was 23, 24 when we met. Um, and then little did we know we would be here 10 years later. You would be on my podcast. We'd both be entrepreneurs 100%. And yeah. So what were you? I mean, we could talk about that night was a blast. And Krystina actually went back to that comedy club for the first time since then. Neither one of us had been back,
This
but we
weekend,
just,
I went back. Yeah.
that's so
For the
funny.
first
Uh,
time.
but we just hit it off from there. And I think you're one of the only friendships that the random meet and then, you were in my wedding. I was in your wedding, like all of these cool things. But what were you doing for work when we met 10 years ago?
When we met, I had just been laid off that February and it was August. I had been working for an ad agency, got laid off. And so at that point, I was bartending and had just started my own graphic design business, not knowing what on earth I was doing. Um,
When we first
yeah.
met, you
And
hadn't been laid off yet. You were still working at the ad agency when we first met.
oh,
You were
right. The
not an
first
entrepreneur
year.
yet.
Oh my
Mm-hmm.
God. Oh, that's
Yeah.
so crazy. Okay,
Yeah.
right. So it definitely was 10 years ago. Right. And not. Oh,
Hmm.
it's so bizarre. Okay. So yeah, so when we first met, I was still at the ad agency, very happily employed. Like, oh my God, not only was I happily employed, but I have never felt the need to be like self-employed. I was, I would even say, like, I remember saying out loud, I enjoy the corporate ladder thing. Like, I get it. Like, get a low paying job, work your way up, hustle and grind, and like make your way to the top, you know? Like, I loved that idea. And and actually, oh my God, I feel like I remember because at the time you were with Origami Owl,
Mhm.
right? And so doing the party business and at the time that was very heavy like all the events over the holidays that we would go to, like you'd set up booths and stuff and I would come with you like super hungover from us going out the night before.
Yep.
And
I was just remembering
you
Halloween. Like we went out Halloween with our friend Mariah, and then we had to do an event. Well, I had to do an event. You decided to come with me for some ungodly reason, and yeah,
I
nope. It
plead the
was in a
fifth. Like we are
church.
not gonna
Cherry on top, it was in a church, and you and I were dying. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But
Yep. That
yes, because
was
I was fully self-employed at that point. That was the first time I was self-employed. I had left my job at Environmental Solutions, which funny enough, I do contracting work for them now. I have so much love for that company. But I was self-employed with Origami Owl, and I remember you and I were in very different phases. You were in the corporate world and I was doing the self-employed thing, and I remember you saying, you were like, "No, I like this." And you were doing incredible work, like for really cool companies doing design
Yeah,
work
there was
too.
some really fun projects I was on. Like there was the boring corporate stuff that I did work for, like a lot of Sam's Club stuff. But then I got to work on the pitch for oh my God, for like Pacific Life. There was so much, there's a lot of fun stuff
Mhm.
that I love to do. So while I was an art director at the ad agency, my skill set was in graphic design. And but I just remember being friends with you and you really opened my eyes to self-employment as a career, right? I have people in my life who have been self-employed, but really, I don't know that I would consider them self-employed so much as in business for themselves as like a side thing. I had
Yeah.
never seen that as a feasible form of income and a feasible reality to like build a life around. And that was so eye-opening, for me. It was really fun watching you.
Yeah. So then we'll fast forward a little bit. I
Mhm.
remember distinctly, I earned a trip to Hawaii through Origami Owl. You were gonna buy in to be my guest because I had an option to buy in a guest, but then you got laid off from said ad agency.
Wow.
It's
I
so funny, man.
totally
Like,
forgot about that. Yes. I mean, obviously I remember the layoff, but all I
mhm,
remember from that time is the layoff, right? Like I feel
yeah,
like we go through these things in life where like there are all these, like I had such an existing life around that time, but all that I remember is the fact that I was laid off and I had, I was living downtown Portland, a pretty more than comfortable lifestyle. I mean, it wasn't the fanciest apartment, but it was like, as you and I love to call it, the bachelorette pad,
yeah,
And yeah, I remember when I got laid off, I almost considered moving in with your parents. You remember that?
mhm.
Like that was a
We did
tough
not know
time.
what was gonna be next
Mm-mm.
for you. But what's
No, and
interesting is
mhm.
I think I mean, in my own story, it was from rock bottom that I've been self-employed, but it was direct sales, so it was different, and I have so much love for the direct sales model. There's a lot of hate for that industry, and I think you can do it right, and I think you can meet incredible people, and I give it a lot of credit for where I am now, but it was 2018, me hitting rock bottom, being almost homeless, that I found really truly found this entrepreneurial path that is fully self-employed, not direct sales. And that's really where it started for you too. Even though even though that's you had a different business then,
Yeah.
let's talk about what your next chapter was.
Yeah. So when I was laid off, someone who was really high up in the ad agency actually took me out to lunch, which was so generous of him. He didn't owe me anything. And he took me out to lunch and he said, listen, like you've done particularly well with branding product projects here at the agency. There are new businesses opening left and right in Portland, Maine, like all the time. Why don't you start a logo design business? Start your own graphic design business. Like that's clearly where you thrive. And while, of course, it stroked my ego a little bit, it was a little terrifying. But I decided, I mean, what else was I going to do? At that point, in my life, just to give a little bit further backstory, when I moved to Portland, Maine, I didn't know anybody in Maine. I had applied to maybe 14 jobs and received like 3 interviews over the course of a weekend. And from when I first said, I think I want to move to this little city called Portland, Maine, to the day that I accepted my job application was like 11 weeks or something. It was such a short period of time. But the whole thing is that any time in life when I make a leap like that, I just believe that you need to have a fallback plan. It's not a matter of like you're going against manifestation and everything. I'm really into that kind of stuff, but I just think it's a safety net. And my safety net was always I can just move back in with my mom. I can, but that would
Yep.
mean going all the way back to Pennsylvania and completely uprooting this life that I had fallen in love with in this city. And so I decided to go for it to start Benedetti Design Company. And I picked up a bartending gig because who am I kidding? I wasn't going to pay any bills with this whole
Mhm.
design world this early. So that was really fun.
And who were you working with designing logos? One of my favorites is still, I think it's Millie's brother, the tiger logo.
Oh my
That is
God,
still one of
Tiger
my
Funk.
favorite
I was
logos.
just
Yeah.
talking to someone about him the other day. Tiger Funk Productions. He still has the logo. I think he's tweaked it a little. I, you know, Wow. No one's asked me who I have designed stuff for back then. Like, because when I was not self-employed, I worked for Harley Davidson. I worked for the VA agency and got to do a lot of cool projects. Like, so when I started working for myself, it was for a lot of smaller businesses. Mike was his name. I can't remember his last name for the life of me, but Mike with Tiger Funk. That was a really fun thing. Basically, more than like who I was working with, I feel like what was really special was that I decided to again per the suggestion of that gentleman who took me out to lunch that day and recommended I go this route. He said, what I would recommend you do is find, and actually anyone who's thinking about starting their own business and has never like made the leap, I could not more highly recommend this path. He said, find like 4 or 5 different graphic design studios, branding, marketing, whatever, who do what you want to do here in Portland and go to their contact us page, write in and try to like get to know the owner and ask them if you can just take them out for a cup of coffee and just ask them about getting into the industry. And so when I did that, at least 3 of them took me up on it. And it was so impactful. Everything from just having ideas as to like, it didn't need to be as complicated as I thought it needed to be, to, of course, one of the best pieces of advice I got was a recommendation to join a very specific networking group if I had the funds to do so. And it's this organization called BNI, and there are networking groups for them all over the world. But without going into too much detail there, I do attribute so much of my success that first year in business to that organization because you go every week, you meet the same people every week, you talk about who you're looking to work with and like what you do and what you do well, and you're in a room with 30 people and they know people who need what you do, and it's about building those relationships. And so I just think that I was really fortunate because from that first day in 2015, I think it
Think
was
so.
20.
I think it was
Yeah, I
15.
think we met in 2014. So it was
Yes.
2015.
Yeah.
From that first day when I joined that networking group to, I mean, honestly, all the way through now, I'm the president of my current chapter. Here I am
Yeah.
9 years later with them. But that was such a part of the reason that I didn't feel like being an entrepreneur was lonely. I was able to meet with people every week. And that's just kind of some of the hardships I think in entrepreneurship that I hear because I love other small businesses.
Mhm.
Like I am with, I mean, you and I are so similar. You just meet other people in this space all the time. But I mean, tell me, do you agree? Like I hear that it's such a lonely path, or it can be a lonely path, like being a self-employed person, if you
Yeah.
don't really know how to find the right support system. So it was a really fun journey. It was really fun. I got to, and I feel like I had a lot of support in spaces I don't know I would have had I not kind of taken all those people out for coffee to figure out like the best path forward. But eventually I got a little bit tired of graphic design, but I don't know if I'm rushing your story here, like with where
Yeah.
you want to go with
So
it.
I want to touch on a couple of things there. The first being this concept of if you're starting a business, reaching out to people that already have that business. And I think there's this common misconception that it's like, why would somebody want to go to coffee with me and tell me how to do what they're doing? Like, that's just going to be competition, where that's not the people you want to meet with anyway. Let's be real. That scarcity mindset. Especially, I mean, it's so easy to give this analogy when it comes to graphic design because not everyone's going to like everyone's style of design, right? Like, that seems like a really easy, like, that makes sense. There's business for everyone, but it doesn't matter what you do. There is business for everyone. Every client is not your client. So sitting down with people, the business brain behind it all, I think that we just need to back up to that for a second because yeah, if you are starting a business or you have a business and you're like, you know what, I want to level it up. I want this goes back to coaching too, but like you're trying to get to whatever's next, sitting down with the people that have done it and the people that are successful are going to want to sit down with you. They're going to want to see your success too, because more than likely, people with a scarcity mindset are not succeeding at what they're doing ultimately. They might in the short run, but they're not going to long term because, again, there is enough business to go around. There's enough business for all of us. We all have the ideal client, we all have our unique styles, no matter what it is that you do. But also, when you started the design company, I do want to touch on the fact that you started bartending at that point too, because that's another thing that I hear about a lot. And I think it's really important to recognize that if you're self employed, if you have your own business, it's okay to have that W 2 safety net too.
Oh my
I mean,
God, yeah.
I just got rid of well, I've had safety nets over the years, backup plans, whatever you want to call it, but I just quit my W 2 gig literally a week and a half ago now.
Woo woo.
And right? It was a long time coming and it's really scary. I am in a different position now because I'm married. My husband has a W 2 consistent income, and that is there's a lot to that. When it was just me, the idea of not having that W 2 income, it just didn't work for me, and it created too much anxiety to be worth it, and then add in health insurance and all that crap too. But I think it's really important to note that just because you have the W 2 job does not mean you don't believe in what you're doing. And I think that's another common misconception. That just means that you have a safety net to fall back on because self-employment is scary. And community is everything, which is what Christina is talking about. But this podcast really is under the premise that entrepreneurship can be fucking lonely. And we
Absolutely.
have to create these communities. And I mean, I can go on so many tangents, ADHD brain today. But there's the part of that too. Your W 2 job is also community for you too. It's also potential
Absolutely.
leads. There's so much to it. But okay, so we'll fast forward and we'll talk about the wine business briefly because you and I did that together for a short time. So you were designing logos. What happened next in the world of Christina?
So at some point in my design business, I got to the point where like I was starting to land not only paying clients because, oh, believe me, in the beginning, I had a good handful of clients, but part of that was because I would do their work in exchange for a testimonial, in exchange for a 5-star review, or, a thorough
Hmm.
review. I would never ask for an exchange for a 5-star review. But anyway, I finally started getting paying clients. I finally started finding partnerships of web designers who had clients who needed logos. And if they need a logo, they need 7 other pieces to support their brand. I started getting into website design. Point being, I started bringing in income. That meant I didn't necessarily need bartender money anymore, which the glory part of that was that I no longer needed bartender hours anymore.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And yes. So, I mean, I loved bartending, but the hours are what have you. Um, so with that, but I still needed some additional income of some. I remember I purchased something from one of our friends, Krystine. She was with Pure Romance and she was
Yep.
coming and making a delivery. And she and I were talking, and I was like, Christine, I feel like this whole party business thing, I feel like I could be good at it, but I haven't heard of a business that like makes me excited. Yes, I love shopping for Jen's jewelry because you're with Origami. I love shopping with you, but like I haven't found something I feel like screams Christina. And she was like, if you just write down 5 things you like, I guarantee you one of them has like a party business thing. And I was like, all right. And then I was going through it, couldn't find anything. And I just said out loud to her with my head in my hands, I just wish there was one for wine. And she was like, there is. And I was like, get out of here. So that's when I decided to take a stab at WineShop at Home, which became my foot in the door to loving sales, to loving entertaining people. It took me a very long time to get into it. And I feel like that could be a whole podcast on its own. Like, I don't want to, focus too much on it. But I mean, I ended up earning my husband and I both all expenses paid trips to Vienna. It was Wine Shop was very much the love of my life for a very brief, like 3 to 4 years or
Mhm.
so. But it
Yeah,
was
I
wonderful.
had started LuLaRoe at that point because 2015 is when I started
Yes.
LuLaRoe. And there's a lot of hate. I mean, there's that stupid documentary out there about LuLaRoe.
Whatever.
And I will just give like a brief, I'll try not to soapbox for too long, but direct sales can be done properly. We all know, the stereotypical girl you haven't heard from since high school that's like, hey girl, how are you? Yes, that shit does happen, but that is not everyone. And I would challenge anyone listening who has a hatred for direct sales to see if you actually have a basis for that hatred or if it's just the
Mm,
stereotypes that are put out there online. And, that can apply to a lot of things, but there's so much hate. And I ended up signing up for Wine Shop at Home. I quit LuLaRoe when I moved to Colorado because I decided it was too much to move across the country. I didn't have any contacts here, very much like when Krystina moved to Maine. I had 3 friends here, but all spread out. And I knew that that was just going to be hard to do, especially with the
yeah.
inventory. And I was literally living in a bedroom with my 2 cats and 2 dogs. But I ended up signing up for Wine Shop a couple months after I moved out here. And I didn't do a ton with it at first, but then in 2020, when the world shut down, I was like, you know what? People need wine. And I put myself through yoga teacher training with my Wine Shop at Home business because my full time job did not pay enough to support both the crazy cost of living out here in Colorado and to add in a couple $1,000s for yoga teacher training. My business was kind of on the back burner at that point because I was very lost into who I was and, my identity, my business and my business's identity are very much intertwined and I was figuring out what that meant. So, if it was not for Wine Shop at Home, I wouldn't have been able to afford yoga teacher training. And years before that, when I did Origami Owl full time, I made almost 6 figures in 1 year. I earned a trip for my best friend Jamie and I to go to Cabo. We went to Cabo the first year, and then I earned a trip to Maui for myself the
Yeah.
following year. I spoke at their national convention. That was the first time I'd been on a big stage speaking to everyone. Like, there are so much you can learn from direct sales if you do it right. And I mean, Michelle Bradley is still one of my best friends, and we met through Origami
Mhm.
Owl over 10 years ago. So I think let's talk more about what the Wine Shop at Home format looks like, because obviously that led a lot into what you're doing with the messy cookie. So
Yeah.
what
Okay.
does selling wine through Wine Shop at Home look like? Or what
Yeah.
did it look
So,
like, I guess,
yeah,
because
at
we
the time,
neither one
yeah,
of us
I
do it
know.
anymore.
Right. Yeah. So at the time, oh my God, I loved it. Once I got over my fear of like what people are going to think of me when I'm standing in front of a room talking about wine,
Mhm.
once I got over that, I just loved it. So essentially, Wine Shop at Home is you have someone who wants to host a wine tasting, and so they host a wine tasting at their home with you like with me as the guide guiding them through their tasting wine by wine by wine. And you don't need to be like a wine expert or anything. I did go and get my sommelier certification because I loved it so much, and that was the same certification, but taught me I will never go into wine professionally because it was so hard. But the tastings themselves weren't. It was amazing. So like you got these little cheat sheet cards and you really just got to like hang out with a group of like, let's say 6 to 12 people around a dinner table. The host picks up a couple cheeses and you guys just like enjoy wine together. And as the consultant, I got to actually like sip on the wine with everyone. And like, so my wine palate got super developed over the course of it. Yeah, I mean, and that was the summation of how it worked. But especially, I think the big takeaways from that are that I became very comfortable public speaking, and I became very confident in front of, let's say, managing myself and maybe how I'm perceived by like a small group of people. Because at some point I had to learn early on, I was struggling to get sales. And this was before I had earned the incentive trip. And I was being coached by someone very high up in the company. And she said, Krystina, she said, I get that you are 27 years old, whatever, 28. She said, but you look like you're like 17. Okay. And she's like, and that's great. And that's going to serve you very well down the line. But you look like a lot like our ideal customer is old enough to be your mother. And with that, like that is, basically all of these things are maybe a little stereotypical and maybe like a little, putting people in a box. But at the end of the day, when you're in sales with a very specific product and a very specific niche, I mean, I remember, and actually, this is the one thing that we will come back to with Messy Cookies. So I want to make sure to share it. I remember specifically, I had this tasting where at the end, everyone is laughing, having the best time. Oh my God, you should stand up. You're just so good at this. Oh my God. Oh my God. You need to go into this. Like, and just everyone's complimenting me left and right, whatever. I am having the best time. They are having the best time. So then we convert to the time where like we're supposed to like place orders. And I don't know, I maybe sold a half a case of wine that night, which for reference for people on, like the bar is at least a case of wine, which is 12
Yeah.
bottles. So, I didn't even hit that. And that was not the only evening that happened. That had become kind of a regular tone. And the thing that the woman who was coaching me said, she said, you are making it too fun. If people are having too much fun with you, they forget that they're at a shopping event and they think that they're at a party. And that was when I was able to start like kind of twisting, like, oh, okay, I need to start reserving this. And we'll talk later, but like that comes back in Messy Cookie in like the whole other way. So yeah, but that was just those were kind of my two really big takeaways from direct sales.
It's funny when my first gig was Pure Romance with our friend Christine. Christine did Pure Romance for a very long time. And that was my first gig out of college. I started it right before I graduated from college, and it's sex toys. For those that don't know, it's romantic accessories. If we want to put it politically correct, it's sex toys. And it was so fun. It was so fun. Christina and I drove to Ohio to go to a convention. We literally drove through the whole night. I'll never forget. We decided to stop for the night because we were exhausted. We stopped in this hotel parking lot, and the front desk guy at the hotel was passed out asleep. And so we could not get a room. So we ended up sleeping for like an hour in her car and then driving the rest of the way. And I won't go too far down this, but on the drive back, we were so sore from being in her car for so many hours. And obviously, we got like the new vibrators to take to show at our parties. We were using them to massage our backs because we were so sore on the drive back. It's one of my
So it
favorite
really
stories
is
with
a
Christine.
personal massager.
Yeah,
Like,
literally. Yeah. Yeah. It was called Secret Service. I'll never forget. And we were using it to massage each other's backs. But when I sold sex toys, I ran into a lot of issues with age discrimination. And it's not intentional. At all. I don't think there was any hard feelings, but I'll never forget. I did a party in a hotel room for a group of women who were celebrating, I believe, a 40th birthday. And I'm 21 at this point, maybe 22. And I remember they looked at me and they go, "You don't look like you're even old enough to know what sex is." And I also have a baby face. I looked like I was maybe 16. And that was kind of the start of the end for me with Pure Romance because there was just a lack of believing that I knew what I was talking about. There's and I also, I didn't want to sell sex toys forever. It was a nice boost in confidence, and same thing. It got me used to talking to groups of people. It got me used to talking to groups of women. But I think if you want to learn sales, direct sales is a great way to do it because you're not worrying about product development. You're not worrying about all the overhead crap. Uh, you can just learn how to sell. So, not to make this a commercial for direct sales, but I am passionate about the fact that direct sales has a bad rep, and I don't think it should. Okay, so let's fast forward to 2018. And this is so funny to me. So I was at the worst point in my life. My ex had called off our wedding. I was going through horrific depression. But I do remember my friend Krystina deciding to start decorating cookies. And I remember thinking, what in the hell is she doing now? Like, you were, top of the world with WineShop, you were killing it. I'm, trying to survive day to day. I was selling off my LuLaRoe. I had just started my VA business, but it was very much if you had a wallet and $10, whatever, I will do the task. And I remember coming to your and Seth's house, which shout out to Seth. My favorite thing also is to mention that we met him at the exact same time, and he's now your husband. We met him at a New Year's party. But I remember coming to your house and you showing me that you were decorating cookies. And I remember thinking, okay, cute hobby, but like, what the fuck is Krystina doing? So, what on earth got you excited to start decorating cookies in 2018?
So in 2018, I had at that point, I had already, I think late 2017 is when I closed down the doors of Benedetti Design Company. I burnt out. I learned what not to do in a business, is how I like to look at that. But so at this point, okay, I'm doing WineShop and I'm only doing WineShop, which is fine. I'm having fun with it. And I'm able to pay the bills. I'm not able to like save. I'm not really able to do much, but I'm able to pay, the bills. And with that, I was feeling really unfulfilled. I loved people. I loved getting to go and like do the tasting thing. But my entire career up to that point, I had been able to satisfy a creative need, a creative desire with like literal, actual design work and everything. And that went away. And I just remember Seth and I were just like scrolling on our phones or something in bed. It was like Sunday morning, like 11. And I'm just seeing all these videos of like cake decorators. And it is so mesmerizing to watch someone with a buttercream and a palette knife, And I was just like, oh my God, I want to do that. And then I was like, wait, I can do that. I was an art major. Like, I can do this. Now, mind you, about 15 years back, I couldn't even bake brownies from a box. Okay. So essentially, I told Seth, I was like, I want to do this. He was like, you should do it. And I was like, okay. And so then as I'm thinking about it, literally that morning, all these decisions were made in like a 32-minute period. I realized that cake decorating, in order to decorate a cake, you need to learn how to make the cake. And that is like constructing cakes, like it's not just the Betty Crocker box in a square pan. So I realized that that was going to take quite a bit of time. And I just wanted some like immediate gratification, something fun I could do right now. So then that's when I was like, wait, I think there's a whole other world here. And I found cookie decorating. And it's a very easy, low barrier to entry. Like there's a big community around inviting people into the cookie decorating community. And so I found like 6 things I needed and a book that was going to give me the basics. And I told Seth and I said, honey, I think I kind of want to try this. I don't really have the money to though. He was like, what do you need? I got it. Like, here, just take my card. It was like $50, and I got everything in from Amazon that week. And I think my first set was like, it was either a bunch of penguins and ice cream cones. Yeah. It was a bunch of penguins and ice cream cones.
I remember them distinctly.
Did you actually see them in person?
Not in person. You sent me
Okay.
pictures.
Yes. So, and it was fun. It was like neon colors of food coloring. And they were, okay, like that set is the reason I'm called the messy cookie. Okay. Like it was comical. You would never have thought I would be going anywhere with it one day. But that period of my life, I told myself and everyone who would listen that this is for me. I'm not going to turn this into a career. You're not going to get paid to decorate cookies. Meanwhile, where are we? I'm never going to do it. This is a hobby. And I mean, what, it was 2018. So it's been 5 years, 6. Yeah.
It's
So,
6 years
here we
ago
are.
that you were, 6 years ago this fall, you were playing around with cookies and I was wondering what the
Yeah.
hell was going on. Because I also knew
Yeah.
you well enough to know you were going to perfect it, even though those first cookies were the messy cookies. They were adorable. But I knew you were going to perfect it. And by then you had had enough of the bug, right? We're talking 3 years into entrepreneurship at this point, and you'd been bit by that bug. And I probably never even said it to you. I knew that this was going to be a thing because it was this beautiful combination of your design skills, which I was so sad when you closed Benedetti and Co. BDCO, right? Benedetti Design
Mhm.
Company. Yes, BDCO.
Mhm.
Um, because you're so talented. But like I could not have picked something so perfect for you to combine your skills of design and your skills of party, but just people. And like I'm not a people person. I am an introvert and like my business works very well for me because most of the interaction I have is through a screen. But you thrive in front of groups of people. And I mean, it progressed quickly enough that I moved to Colorado in December of 18, and that is when you started playing around with cookies. And I believe it was that January that I ordered cookies from you for Darren's birthday, for my nephew's birthday.
Absolutely. The chemistry cookies, we did the periodic table. Oh, we didn't do the periodic.
Those
Yeah, but
were
it was all the chemistry, like,
that was November for Julian, but I think we did Harry Potter or something that January
oh,
for
you're
Darren.
right. Oh, I
Like, it was a matter of
forgot.
just a couple months later that you were selling cookies and that the messy cookie was born. So what was that like, that transition from this is a hobby, I'm not going to make money, to the messy cookie?
So, okay, it's worth pointing out that that first I want to say I think it was October. Ray, don't kill me. I'm shout out to my friend Ray, to my best friend. So she was giving birth in December. And so I wanted to do cookies for her baby shower. And I knew that they wouldn't care how good the cookies were, good, with air quotes kind of thing, how skilled they looked or whatever. But I wanted to do something nice. And I wanted to prove to myself that I could create a nice cookie. And I had never created like formally designed cookies before. And my one of my other best friends, Lauren, came over to my house that day and she helped me out and we made little navy blues. The theme was planes, trains, and automobiles. And so we had like little outlines of airplanes, little outlines of cars, and we put like cute little like pearls on them. And but they looked really nice. And when I brought them to the shower down in Pennsylvania, people thought they were from a real bakery. And I was so floored. And I didn't know what that felt like. That was it felt very similar to if there are any, graphic, I mean, especially I think you would get this with graphic design and all of the creative work that you do, that feeling of someone loving something that you make, especially when it's something that like there it was just so low risk, like they didn't need to love it and they didn't need to lie about it. So that was really amazing. And I think that was the first real project that I did. And then my next goal was, okay, well, my sister was getting married the following May. And so with that May, I was like, okay, I want to be able to make cookies for her wedding. She was very not bridezilla. She was like, I don't care what they look like. Like they could just be icing splattered on a cookie. And so, but I did cute little hearts with like little like bridal dresses and tuxes and stuff. And when I posted photos of those, one of my design clients who I hadn't spoken to in a while reached out, said, I saw those cookies. My son's graduating at the end of May. Will you please make cookies for his graduation? It's like, well, I mean, I'm not going to do that for free. Like, I mean,
Yep.
I guess I'll take money for it. And so it begins. And
Mhm.
so hers, and then this is how word of mouth, this is how small business works, right? So, like, okay, great, I did hers. And then I get a DM on Instagram from one of my clients and friends. Now her name is Holly. But at the time, Holly was like, hey, my friend, you're doing her um, graduation cookies. Can you do my daughter's graduation cookies? I was like, oh my God, I guess so. And that's how it like jumped to person to person to person. And it just took off. And I still remember my very first client who was a complete stranger from Massachusetts who reached out. And I was shocked. It was for like her son's 7th birthday or something. And I think I made like dinosaur cookies for her. And that was kind of the first point that was a tipping off point for me where I realized, oh, I might have something here. And I think I need to start figuring out how to turn this into a business if I really want to do this.
Yeah. And I can already tell we're going to do a part two so that we can dive a little deeper into a lot of this. But I really wanted to dive through your journey. You were doing a lot of custom cookies at the beginning. I ordered at least 3 sets. I know we did the science ones for Julian's birthday. We did sheep and something
Yeah.
for Penny's birthday.
Like farm. Mhm.
Yep, you sent me cookies for my 30th birthday, which was the following year. That was December of 2019. Let's talk about cookie ice nights, where your
Yes.
business went. That was kind of like
Yeah.
the next change in the messy cookie.
Yes. So that was fall. Right. So it was that following year. I don't know what any year marks these are, but
2019
I
because it was
remember.
before COVID.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it was. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay.
Yeah.
So my cousin and my sister came over one day because they were in town. And I was like, hey, I'm so sorry I can't come to dinner tonight. I have cookies I need to finish. And they were like, oh, cookies. Now, mind you, they're like in their like late 20s, early 30s. I'm like 32 maybe at this point. And they're like, cookies, can we come over and make cookies? And I was like, oh my God, you like hip 20 something or 30-year olds want to make, like, I thought I was a weirdo for like wanting to start this random hobby. Yes, come hang out with me while I do cookies. And so then I kind of just gave them the basics. I gave them a couple bags of icing and some cookies and was like, have fun. And I kind of gave them a few tips here and there. And as I did that, we just kind of had a good time that afternoon. We all kind of finished, put our stuff away, and their cookies looked really cute. And I told them as such. And I remember my sister was like, "You're a great teacher." And I was like, "Oh my God, I didn't teach you anything." And she was like, "No, you did." And then my cousin was saying the same thing. And I just remember sitting with that for a day or two. And then the next morning, I was talking with Ray, my friend, and she was talking about a yoga class or something. And it just clicked like, yoga class. Okay. Cookie class. I don't know. I'm not good enough. I think a lot of us, like, have you ever felt like you dealt with the imposter syndrome of like, I'm not good enough
Time.
to be doing
All
this?
the time. Yeah. And
Right.
that's kind of become a trend on the podcast. There's some upcoming episodes too where we talk about it a lot. Like
Yeah.
Shalisa, whose episode was live a few last week. She put it so beautifully. She and I were talking about it again when I met with her last week. Like, if someone's gonna do it, why not you? And like that's how she combats imposter
Right.
syndrome. And I was like, that's perfect. Like somebody's gonna do it, it might as well be you. So
I
yes.
love that. And my biggest thing was like, okay, but a class sounds so formal, right? And whereas, what if we do cookie decorating party? And that was where I started to become comfortable. And I started thinking about like the paint nights, the muse paint bars of the world, where that person did not go to art school to learn acrylic painting. That person filled out a job application and was given instruction on how to paint this dolphin and how to tell people how to paint this dolphin. And
Yeah.
if people can do that, I'm like, I know I'm fun, like my wine shop career, like explained that to me. And so that was when I thought about it. I remember reaching out to my friend Lauren and I was like, I don't know, I was thinking maybe charging like $15 to get it. She was like, if you don't charge at least $50, she was like, this is that you have value. And I was like, but I'm not like that good. I'm not like that much of an expert. And I just remember her saying, like, you have value. It's not just your skill. Like, you being the person doing this is what differentiates you, and you deserve to be compensated for that. And that was like where the rest of my, I think, career like really where the messy cookie transformed from hobby, hobby cash to like realizing what I want to do for a living.
So we're talking fall of 19, and then this beautiful thing called COVID happened in 2020. And I think there's another shift. And I think what's beautiful about your story, about my story, is these shifts we made, not only because of what we wanted, but what our circumstances were too, right? I mean, literally, if we go back to BDCO, you never planned on being self employed, but the universe was like, here's a layoff. What are you going to do with it? And can you imagine if you hadn't been laid off? How
No.
different your life would be
I
now.
never would have met Seth. Like, I can't believe I don't know what my life would be like. Would you and I be like I mean,
Right.
I just can't imagine.
Right, because our friendship, I mean, like, a perfect example, I launched a website last week and I was like, "Hey, Krystina, I'm exhausted and I did all this work this week. Can you just tell me this looks pretty? Like, I don't want any critiques. I just need to hear that this looks pretty." And like, I think there's a maturity in that, like, having those friends that like, I just need you to celebrate with me. And there's an extra layer because like my best friend is my biggest fan. But she's never been self-employed. She's in the corporate world. Whereas like you are an entrepreneur, you get the late nights, the like, okay, the client wants this by Friday. Let's put in the 100 hours to get it done.
Mhm.
And sometimes you just need the person that can fucking celebrate with you and understand it. And we've become that for each other. And you and I are so good about either being like, hey, I need advice, or hey, I really just need to vent. I don't want any advice. I just need somebody to listen. Okay, so COVID
Absolutely.
hits. And then you were doing these ice nights. Um, you were
COVID
seeing the
hits.
pos Go ahead.
I'm writing a business plan on a train back from Florida where I have what I lovingly call delusions of grandeur that, oh my God, I think I make a franchise. Like, I'm genuinely thinking about how to franchise in-person cookie ice nights, which, by the way, I do love to say I did trademark the term cookie ice night at this point in time. And I return from a trip to Florida on March 12th,
When the world shut
29th,
down.
2020.
Yeah.
Yeah. Literally, as I'm writing it, I come home and that like following Monday is when they're like, yeah, nobody's going to leave their home. Oh my God. I was supposed to get married that June. And we were so silly. We rescheduled it twice to like August and then September. And then, like just I didn't end up actually getting married till June of 21 and all this crazy stuff. But, you know, COVID tore a lot of businesses apart. And I don't like to speak lightly of what it did, but I also feel the need to acknowledge that it was the proving point for me that I know how to pivot in a business. If you can't pivot as a business owner, you are not going to be able to thrive when life comes at you.
Yep.
This, I found essentially someone who'd gone to one of my in-person cookie ice nights, uh, reached out to her employer because her employer was looking for team building stuff. It was April. Well, her employer was Wayfair, and her manager at Wayfair reached out to me and said, "Hey, we heard that you do team building stuff. Could you do something virtual for us?" I basically quoted them a song if I could use their logo on my website if they would allow me to. And they approved, and we like the idea of the virtual team building event and the messy cookie had started. At this point, mind you, I feel like it is worth mentioning. I picked up a day job
Oh,
in
yeah.
retail at a kitchen store.
Yeah.
So I was working at LaRue Kitchen. I still had wine tastings occasionally. The virtual wine tasting world, I kind of slowed out of a little bit, but mostly because once I started working with Wayfair, I started posting about it. I started getting other companies who reached out to do virtual team building stuff, and it exploded. And that is why from 2020 to 2021, I remember in 2020, my first event was I only made 3 kits and sent them out, but I did a virtual recorded class for like the entire global corporation of Wayfair. And then I took a couple events here over there for like 12 people, 8 people, 5 people, 20 people. 25 people was the largest. And then someone, her husband's company had done my cookie ice night. And she was at home when her husband, they were decorating cookies together on my cookie ice night cookie decorating party, my virtual one. And she said, my company needs to have it. It's a huge corporation name. I'm not allowed to share it because we signed an NDA. And it was amazing. It was 3 times the size of the largest event I'd ever done. And from there, it only went up. And over the pandemic, the Messy Cookie exploded in the virtual team building event space.
And I want to say, yes, there's a lot of businesses that were lost because of COVID. And both of us, you living in Maine, me being from Maine, there's a lot of businesses that took incredible hits in Maine because of the tourism industry alone. So I do not want to discount that to any level. That being said, your point of the fact that you have to be able to pivot. And, I don't watch Friends, but we can insert the pivot memes that everybody has from Friends. But you did a beautiful job of pivoting when the world forced you to. And I think that is part of the key to success with entrepreneurship, no matter what industry you're in. I mean, with me, I started off again, if you had $10 and you wanted me to do an hour of work, sure. My first social media packages, I charged $180 for 20 social media posts a month. Like fully curated, designed social media posts. And looking back, I'm like, hell no. Now it's at least my minimum's 500, which still isn't enough. But you did such a great job
Cute
of
though,
pivoting.
isn't it a little like, do you feel nostalgic ever thinking
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
yeah.
instead of kicking yourself, like it's kind of cute. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
6 years ago, $180, 20 social media. Oh, you want 30? Sure. No problem. No extra charge. Um, but what is, and I do want to do another episode where we dive a little deeper into the current Messy Cookie, but what's the biggest event you've done to date now?
I want to say the largest event I booked was with Grammarly. Nope, not Grammarly. Scribd. And it was a 286 person event. And so for just to kind of give a little bit of I wish I thought to actually pack a box and share one as a visual, but I'd like to describe what this really means, because it's one thing to say that I gave a cookie decorating party to almost 300 people, but that season is the season that I'm like the most fond of, especially with that event. So this was over the holiday season. I received the referral from a company that like was hired to book team building events. And they reached out to me and said they had had a cookier for this event who backed out. Can I do it? And I agreed. And I recruited what I called my skeleton crew, my cookie skeleton crew. I think there were 8 women and one of their husbands who had his experience was in like packaging and stuff. And so he was really helpful just with like building boxes and stuff. And so this was holiday season. We probably had maybe 12 events that we were doing just in this 1 week period. But one of those 12 events was this 286 person event. So each box is a box that includes 4 sugar cookies, 4 colors of frosting, a buttercream frosting that I found pre-made, cookie decorating tools, and sprinkles. All of that needed to be packaged individually.
And you had to make
So
all
we
the
had
cookies. So I want to
yes, I baked all the
like
cookies
the
myself.
cookies are not store bought. Like Krystina and her crew
Mhm.
are making all of. So we're talking 4 cookies, 208. So that's over, far above 1,000
That's
cookies for this
absolutely,
event. Yeah.
absolutely. And also, just a little fun little thing is that you never bake the number you need. You need to have like an exit because there are breakages and yada yada. So like, so yeah, it was just 1,000 and thousands of cookies that entire season. And so that was great. That event was, I want to say, over a $30,000 event, which was insane for revenue. That's never happened in my career. Like that was bananas. And being able to, but that also includes the cost of shipping, right? So like I have to ship all of these cookies to each person's home. We had to perfect the packing. This also included shipping to, I want to say it was 14 countries. That number could be wrong.
think this is the
But
one I helped with. I helped with figuring out the shipping labels.
yes, I
This is the
think you
time when
did. Yeah, I
When
think
you and
you
I were
did.
working together and I was figuring
Mhm.
like, there's a lot to it. Um, what does the messy cookie look like now? Because the world has quote unquote opened back up. But for those watching this on TikTok or on YouTube, you can see this beautiful space that Christina is sitting in. And I do, again, we're going to dive deeper into a lot of this. But what does your business look like now?
The messy cookie is now working out of its own space. This whole room is probably about 1,800 square feet. This whole thing is not mine. This little area here is. So I'm renting space out of here with one of my closest friends, Lauren. She's a food photographer. We are starting this space together. So I have basically my hands in a couple like community support style businesses, like this whole space being support for local entrepreneurs. But the messy cookie is I specialize in I specialize in branded sugar cookies. So I, over the course of the pandemic, I invested in a cookie printer. So I still print, I'm sorry, I still bake and ice the cookies, and then it prints logos and photos and all that good stuff on them. Um, so I'm really building a name for myself in Maine as the branded cookie artist is kind of the goal. And with that, I'm also now opening a pop-up shop where every Friday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. I'm going to be open I'm going to have like 3 to 4 different kinds of cookies, nothing super crazy, but I'm already here on Fridays anyway. And I've loved every opportunity whenever I do a pop up somewhere else. So I figured let's open one up here. And I'm going to sell coffee and people can just come in and grab something and go. And I'm in a very I'm not in downtown Portland. I'm in a residential side. And with that, I just think that this is going to be I can tell already. I hosted a coffee tasting here a couple weeks ago, and so many of my neighbors here in the shop came out just to tell me how excited they are that I'm bringing this kind of life here to this corner, to this area that I'm in Portland. And so I'm just really excited to see like how much being a part of the community is going to affect like that fulfillment that, without doing, I don't do the virtual team building events that much anymore. I'm sure I'll do it over the holidays. Um, but life just looks very different, but it feels more manageable and it feels like a really great path for me to build a bit more of a future around it.
So you're doing the branded cookies. Are you doing custom cookie designs like you?
Yes, so I do still do custom cookies. I do a handful of them a month. Most cookiers, so a cookier is the term for what I am technically. Most cookiers, if they are able to like sustain a career with cookie decorating, they likely will take on easily at least 5 orders a week. I know a few who like that's a light week for them. And an order is never fewer than 2 dozen cookies, right? Just for reference. So I don't do that. Um, because I've already burned out once in a business and I don't want to do it again. So yeah, but I do still do those and they're really fun and they're part of what I love too. And I also am getting into like educating people, like teaching people how to still doing like in-person cookie ice nights, but with teaching people how to paint on cookies, which you are super familiar with. I'm basically 2024 has kind of been the year for me to like try a couple things here and there, keep the custom cookies coming, keep the branded cookies coming, like keep my base of revenue
Yeah.
going. But like I tried launching a subscription box. We're shifting it to be quarterly instead of monthly. And something you helped me a lot with in our strategy session that I hired you for. And that was such an awesome, so much came out of that. But you know, learning how to like try my hand at different things to feel that level of fulfillment. And it's just really nice finally feeling like I'm making my way slowly but surely.
I'm gonna back up for a second. The talk of burnout. That's also something that a lot of business owners go through. I went through this period this year that I was like, I've got to shift some gears. I've got to get control of my schedule. But I think there's beauty in how you're handling it. The fact that you're only doing, which, to anyone who is not a cookier, 5 custom orders a month sounds like a lot. But you get to be more selective and pick the ones that feel good, that it's inspire, especially as an artist, that feel good, that, stroke that part of your brain that just wants to get creative. So, I mean, instead of just taking every project, again, we all start there. A lot of us start there anyway, like with me, with taking anyone who would pay me to do anything. Um, but you get to pick those that do ignite that fire and that passion. What keeps you going in all of this? I mean, we haven't even talked about the photo booth. We'll have to talk about that next time. We'll talk more about the space.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get you and Lauren on an episode too, and we can talk about the
Oh
photo
my
booth.
God, we would
That would be
love
fun.
that.
Yeah,
Oh my
let's
God,
plan that.
I
But
love that.
this shit, I mean, even with the community, even with everything, even, having a best friend who's an entrepreneur too, several best friends that are entrepreneurs too, like this shit gets hard sometimes. Like money
Yeah,
gets tight or something
yeah,
goes wrong or,
yeah.
what keeps you going when shit gets hard?
But like, I love this life. Like, I have been working so hard to build a reality that matches the vibration that I want to live on. And it's not always there, it's not always there. And there are months like last month, I had a friend come into Ray, she and her family came into town and they left on like July 6th. And that night, that afternoon, I was here and I was baking till 2 o'clock in the morning and I was back the next day. Almost every single day for the month of July, I was here till at least 10 p.m., if not later. Um, it's, I try to reel it in when that happens, but sometimes, when the orders are here and they're flowing and oh, this means a new potential relationship with this client, you do what you got to do, and sometimes when I'm in the thick of that, it's hard to not think about like, this isn't sustainable. This isn't what I can build a career off of for the rest
Yeah.
of my life. But I just know, like, I know somewhere deep down, like, I feel it that there is a way to crack this code that, like, yes, some months are going to be like that and it'll be in October through December and like maybe one or two, maybe like July's, but there's a way to find out how to make the first quarter more sustainable. There's a way. I just need to find what it is. And
Yeah.
that I think is why I'm still going. I think, should there ever come a day where I feel like I have tried everything and it's just not, nothing's really cutting it, I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
Yeah.
But that's a long ways away. And I had some business coaches I was with for a couple years whom I loved, and they really opened my eyes. It was 2020 and I was feeling really good about these the virtual cookie ice nights I was doing for like the public. And I had told them like, oh, I think I'm gonna start a subscription box. And they were like, cool, love that. Let's talk about what you've been doing though, like your team building events. And long story short, they just said, listen, like they've worked with thousands of women and they're like, listen, most women in business, especially in creative businesses, because we're idea people. We think one thing that we're doing is good. And then we're like, great, what's the next thing? Like, what's the next thing? But typically, that thing that is good can be better. And it probably should be better, even though it's at a level of good. So please put that, that subscription box idea on the back burner and hold on to it. Don't get rid of it. It's not a bad idea, but find the time. Let's go through every single step of it. Let's go through everything. So I just think that, to bring it back to what I'm really referring to, like, even if, okay, I tried this and I tried, it's difficult to make. I really need to break Q1. Like, I got to figure out how to make Q1 like a sustainable, thriving business. And that's kind of something I'm really trying to focus on. But even when I try things, I just think you got to you got to keep perfecting it. Like, you think you've tried it, but have you really perfected it? So that's what keeps me going.
I love it. Um, how can people find the messy cookie, both in person for those of you in Maine? I know I have some listenership, of course, in Maine, and online. How can people find you?
All right. All right. In Maine, my new shop is not at the correct address on Google. I'm working on that. It is at 1190 Forest Ave. It's at Morals Corner in Portland. So please DM me on Instagram. I'm happy to like give you exact specifics to come see me, come hang out. I love having people here for a cup of coffee if you ever just want to kill some time. Um, but online, I'm at themessycookie.com. But if you want to like chat and like hang out and ask baking tips and whatever, find me on Instagram. That's like where I kind of live. It's at the.messy.cookie. So it's just the messy cookie with some periods in there. And I am on TikTok, I am on YouTube, and of course I'm on Facebook. But I'm the messy cookie on all of them. So I would, yeah, love to chat with anyone who has any questions about stuff or wants to come and try a cookie.
Awesome. Well, we will definitely do a part two. We'll talk to Lauren too about maybe getting, talking about the photo booth. So there's a little teaser for those of you listening. But thank you so much, Christina. I knew this episode was gonna be a little bit longer. It might even be two parts. We'll see. But it was such a unique opportunity to actually walk through the journey of an entrepreneur. And your journey is not over. I have no doubt that there will be many more chapters and shifts and pivots, and that's the beauty in it all, is we get to shift and pivot and continue to live this life. I'm in this really weird, this is week 2 of not having my W-2 job, and I am forcing myself to just sit in the little bit of uncomfortableness of figuring out what my schedule looks like, and then I get to decide what I wanna do with it. So,
I love that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a cool life. It's a really cool life. So, for all of you listening, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Your Next Business Bestie. If you want to connect with me about strategies, social media, websites, document design, all of the things, then you can find me on Instagram at lifejensway or jen@jensway.com. Also, if you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for tuning in for another week. Christina, thank you again, and I'll talk to you all next time. Have a wonderful week.
Thanks so much.